The views expressed on this podcast are Peter Dekom's opinions based on his legal experience, research, and academic work. The podcast does not offer legal advice. For any legal matters, always consult an independent attorney who can assess your specific situation. And now, on with the show.
Hi, everybody. It's Peter Dekom again, and today I'm going to try to do a thing called Transitions, Living Today, but it's actually about everything. It's trying to combine a bunch of stuff that I've talked about and looking at the numbers and looking at reality of what everybody faces and whether to deal with it or not. But I'd like to start this with something that actually means a lot to me. In 1966, former Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who is the brother of Ted Kennedy, made a speech in Cape Town, South Africa. And basically, this is like 2 years before he was assassinated in Los Angeles, not far from where this podcast is emanating. And this is part of a speech that he made. And I thought it's an interesting statement that maybe Americans need to take to heart, even as we seem to be stabbing and hating each other and having a president ordering people to kill congressmen because they basically are telling soldiers to follow the Constitution. I mean, it's all crazy. So I'll start now. At the heart of Western freedom and democracy is the belief that the individual man, the child of God, is the touchstone of value, and all society, all groups and states exist for that person's benefit. Therefore, the enlargement of liberty for individual human beings must be the supreme goal and the abiding practice of any Western society. The first element of this individual liberty is the freedom of speech, the right to express and communicate ideas, to set oneself apart from dumb beasts of the field and forest, the right to recall governments to their duties and obligations, above all, the right to affirm one's membership and allegiance to the body politic, to society, to the men with whom we share our land, our heritage, and our children's future. Hand in hand with freedom of speech goes the power to be heard, to share in the decisions of government which shape men's lives. Everything that makes man's lives worthwhile, family, work, education, a place to rear one's children, and a place to rest one's head, all this depends on the decisions of government. All can be swept away by a government which does not heed the demands of the people, and I mean all of its people. Therefore, the essential humanity of man can be protected and preserved only where the government must answer, not just to the wealthy, not just to those of a particular religion, and not those to a particular race, but to all the people. And even government by consent of the government, as our own Constitution, must be limited in its power to act against its people, so there can be no interference with the right to worship, but also no interference with the security of the home, no arbitrary imposition of pains or penalties on ordinary citizens by officials high or low, no restriction on freedom of men to seek education or to seek work or opportunity of any kind, so that each man may become all that he is capable of becoming. Now, that was spoken, we're coming up rapidly on Robert Kennedy, what would have been Robert Kennedy's 100th birthday. And I thought it was appropriate to start with that because, number one, it defines what government should be doing for you and how you should be approaching the government. And I'm looking at the world that we face today, and right now we are in a country where, according to a Fox News poll, 76% of all Americans believe the economy is completely in the wrong direction. Yet, you'll get numbers like this. Our trade deficit has fallen by nearly 24% this summer, and it's falling farther. Whoa, that's wonderful news until you look at it. Number one, it's not coming because we're exporting more, because people aren't actually wanting to buy American products. You go to Canada, if it's made in the United States, they say buy Canadian, and you do find that in other countries as well, all because of our tariffs. It's happened because Americans can't buy what they used to. Even steel and aluminum are tariffed today, and that's wonderful for the one worker that tariff saves, jobs that are being saved. There's 70 to 80 workers who lose their jobs because the products that are manufactured from those metals can't be made cheaply. So they stop making them. It doesn't make sense to do that. So all those people lose their jobs. And, we look at this stuff. We know the tariffs are stupid. I don't care what anybody tells you. At this point, you don't need a PhD in economics, although all the PhDs in economics seem to agree this idea of tariffing these universal tariffs are, well, not a very good idea, and they don't work well. One of the things that you have is a Supreme Court that just heard a case, a couple of weeks ago. It heard a case challenging the president's right to assess tariffs. If there's one phrase that leapt out at me at that, I listened to the whole damn thing. It was this statement by the Solicitor General under the Biden administration, et cetera, acting Solicitor General, and he said the following. He opened his statement with 3 words: tariffs are taxes. If you don't get that, you don't understand tariffs. And yet, to this day, Donald Trump will tell you tariffs are not taxes. They're regulations. In fact, that was the whole case before the Supreme Court. The tariffs are just one way of enforcing regulations, said the lawyers for the government. They're not really the focus of it. And yet you can have recordings of Donald Trump talking about what a great revenue enhancer this is going to be. It will help pay for the tax cuts. Those tax cuts, by the way, are at the bottom of most of the economic failures that we're seeing in front of us today. And if you think prices are going to drop, if we drop all the tariffs, yeah, they'll drop a little bit. But what happens generally when you have major price increases in commodities, they tend to stay up. So what we're watching is perhaps a reset of the entire American economy, and the issue of affordability is huge. The average age of an American today buying their first home is 40 years of age. That's absurd. We have people with student loans that are paying these off. And when you have these massive lingering student loans, human beings don't get married. They don't do a whole bunch of things that get going when you start buying a home, start having a family. We've stopped that. And it's not like we're basically sitting in a situation where this is only affecting the United States. Our tariffs, up and down, taco, in and out, whatever is going on, are now basically such that the European Central Bank issued a warning that the global uncertainties have surged to such exceptional levels that banks must prepare for sudden and severe disruptions to the global financial system and economy. So not only are we screwing ourselves up, we're screwing up the world, and the world doesn't tend to forgive stupidity that quickly, and we're paying through the nose for anything that we want. Pasta, for example, good Italian pasta is now facing an increased price of 107%. Che pasta, what's noodling? No, I don't like that. I love pasta, so that's not a good thing. We also just, recently got a jobs report. We didn't get anything for October. I wonder why. It had something to do with a shutdown. I don't know what that was. But in any event, we got September numbers, and they're pretty decent. They're much higher than they were projected. We got 115,000 new jobs in September, but there's a catch. The unemployment rate went from 4.3 up to 4.4%. So what you're watching is a push-pull in the economy, and this is something for you to assess. Where are you? And I think the dividing line right now is probably somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. And we have something called a K-shaped economy. The K-shaped economy basically shows rising revenues, values, and wealth for those above that line. That's the top of the letter K. And then for those who are basically below that line, it's the bottom of the K going downwards. So you're having 2 parallel population groups within the same economy, one with the economy going up and the other one with the economy going down. And so how do you create policy for people where your entire country is divided? Probably this one, it looks like it's divided like 75%, 25%. How do you create policy for that? And we're looking at people who are now facing their Affordable Care Act premiums, where the subsidies are going away. And without those subsidies, the prices for insurance are actually doubling or going higher in a number of cases, and people just can't afford it. Well, I say, well, that's the way it is. They're winners and losers. That's the Trump philosophy, and the losers just don't get covered in the new economy. We need to incent the winners, the people who create the values. Well, that doesn't sound particularly American or particularly Christian or Jewish or whatever faith you may be. Charity does not seem to require that the rich people must maintain the richness, but a lot of people believe that. But if you think it doesn't affect you, let's look at what happens when someone doesn't have health insurance. First of all, they delay with their diseases or ailments or fractures or pains, and they let whatever they have get worse and worse and worse. By the time it becomes intolerable, there's only one place for them to go where they won't be turned down: the emergency room. That's a hospital. How does the hospital pay for that? It has to charge everybody a little bit more because those costs don't go away. And for the most part, hospitals are not permitted to turn down desperate people. They just can't do that. So now you have this push for all medical costs to go up, for each procedure to cost more, in order to pay for those people who are not getting insurance coverage or government insurance coverage. So we're all paying more. And that means your ordinary policies that are being issued, policies where you get to pick what you're going to, it's provided by your employer or you pay for it privately. I know I recently saw a $400 a month increase for my wife. And I found that to be rather ridiculous, but my wife's going to get covered. That's life. And that's wife. But whatever else is said and done, it isn't right. We're going in the wrong direction. Most of the world is on universal health insurance. Everybody has it. Everybody's covered. There may be minor charges. Like, for example, in Europe, if you have medical medicines that you pay for every month, you can't pay more than €10. It's about $13. And every visit, you'll pay something, $5 to $10. It's not a lot of money, but if you have a $200,000 medical issue, you'd pay probably $10. And you walk out of the hospital having all the surgery and care you need, and you don't have to sign anything or pay anything. You just go. We don't have that. We're the only country in the developed world. And we just had an election in New York City. Mondami just became mayor of New York. He's a democratic socialist, and everyone's freaking out. We have communists in New York. We're going to let's deport him. He was a naturalized citizen. Trump suggested maybe he would reject that citizenship to get him out of the United States. First of all, we got to stop with all the label stuff. What you really have to ask, instead of saying he is finish the word, ask what the human being that you're trying to evaluate stands for. What are they made in policies? Not what other people's opinions are. I don't give a rat's butt what a lot of people think about folks, unless I've made an independent assessment of what that human being is within himself or herself. And I think that's an important reality. Labels are destroying this country. People who use labels do not understand. They do not solve anything. And by the way, I do have to give Donald Trump some credit. He was a very good issue spotter. He spotted in the United States that we had an immigration problem. He was right. He spotted in the United States that people were taking unfair advantage of the United States in trade practices. He was right. He was basically telling the world that the NATO allies weren't paying their fair share for their own protection. He was right. And we stopped there. His solutions are awful. And this is going to be hard for a lot of people to believe, but Barack Obama deported more undocumented aliens during the same space of time than Donald Trump has. It's clear that his methodology sucks. It's clear that it's cruel. It violates every Christian and other major religion ethos. And I sort of asked myself, why are we having so many policies that fly in the face of, I guess, religious morality, whether you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Baha'i, whatever your faith may be? Why? And so I was reading this interesting article by Caroline Bologna, who basically asked herself a question. How come deep, faithful Christians, evangelicals, are embracing policies of extreme cruelty, a lack of charity. Why? But that's not their religion. That's not what Christianity is about. The New Testament, and I was a good little altar boy in my misspent youth. The New Testament is about charity, forgiveness, and tolerance. And none of those qualities are valued so much anymore. We have people saying tough things, and I wondered how that was reconciled. People who really and truly have read the New Testament and understand what it says, as well as the Old Testament, understand that kindness is a value which every deeply religious human being in every major religion that exists on this planet, is part of their value system. But we're not showing kindness. We're showing cruelty. You think alligator Alcatraz is a funny word? Have you seen what they did before it was basically turned away? They stopped it. Look what we're doing to people. They're eating food with maggots in it. They didn't necessarily commit crimes. Remember, we were told point blank, we're going to go after those criminals across the border. They're going out first. That didn't happen because we weren't getting enough numbers. We were basically living in a quota system. So without those numbers, basically what, Homeland Security said, just go for them. Just get as many as you can. Go to places where there are a lot of them. Stack them up. Get them out. We'll put them on airplanes. And Christy Nome, I did all my hair. I'm very pretty. So I'm going to do commercials. Oh, it might be that a company that I'm affiliated with will do the commercials. We'll make a few bucks. Hey, but that's the new way in the cabinet today. It's okay to make bucks. By the way, did you see my new plane? I hear, Kash Patel has one too. We like our new planes. They're nice, but we need them. Oh yeah, we need them because we go places. You didn't have to get that expensive an aircraft, but there is this blindness. So what is it that makes people do this? And so there's a concept called vertical morality. Vertical morality basically teaches that authority, power, and a moral code of right and wrong, or acceptable or unacceptable, come from above. An external superior who designates rules, systems, and tenets that must be obeyed by those beneath. Now, you notice it didn't say God was the person or the entity, the deity that was on top of this. It was basically the superiority that was created, the hierarchy that was created by the society around the person determines that the person on top has the moral authority to define what's moral and what's not. So I'm thinking about our saying, okay, we want to have the pussy grabber define morality in the United States. I'm sorry, I've never gotten over that. It bothers me. It still bothers me. And so, yes, God in religion is a superior being. But once God anoints, or at least in my opinion, or the opinion of the relevant congregation, anoints somebody to be a leader, and they believe that Donald Trump was so anointed, all you need to do to be a moral human being is to follow the dictates of that individual, to which I have a simple linear bullshit. That's not morality at all. That's contextual morality. It's dependent morality. It's morality defined by leaders. And it's what happens when you have rule by law created by people who think they can create law as opposed to rule of law, which is enabled by the people that are being governed. We have gone from a nation of law very quickly into a nation by law. And if you look at some of my earlier podcasts, I went into that with a lot more detail. Now, we live in this lovely context. It's a wonderful thing to look around. But when you say, how would I feel if I were treated the way I'm treating other people? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or whatever that expression is. It's a very fundamental moral precept. And it's not just Christian, it's across many religions. It's the golden rule if you're a Christian. And that rule is breached by almost every part of our current government. If we want to have God in our lives, if that matters to you, might not, but maybe you want a moral code in your life, and maybe that's enough. But whatever it is, what we're doing ain't working. Do you like watching people get beaten up by people wearing masks and no identification? Do you like watching someone hammer a car window and shatter it, reach in and drag the person out, and you can't tell who they are because they're wearing masks? Is it odd to you that every single city where those ICE agents are being deployed are blue cities, even if they're in red states? And what you're seeing is people getting away with murder, and I mean that literally, because of a political choice. That's not government of the people. It's not by the people. It's government by authority, and the authority that is justified in this lovely vertical morality schema, which is what a lot of ministers and evangelical churches are saying. Trump is the anointed one. Follow his words. He speaks with the support of God. Now, I don't know where they got that, but they seem to have got that, and it's not right. There's other things going on in the world which terrify us. AI. I think actually the response to AI is the correct one, but artificial intelligence is a fascinating issue right now. First of all, it hallucinates a lot. A lot of the output you get, I had a lawyer send me, here's an analysis of a life story or whatever. I looked at it and I said, yeah, it's about 80% right, but that 20% will kill you. And part of this is like we're giving up independent thought and analysis to put in a robot that isn't quite there yet. And as you look at our economy, this is going to sound nuts, but it's true. 80% of the growth of the American stock market since Donald Trump was elected is attributed to the growth of AI stocks. Now, look, I'm never going to tell you NVIDIA or Microsoft or Google or Oracle, these big players are going to go out of business. They can withstand the hit. And even as I'm speaking, NVIDIA is still going up. It's going to be a $5 trillion company. But when you think about 80% of the stock market attributed to one industry, where have we seen this before? Well, in recent history, we had a dot-com bubble around 2000. In 2000, 2008, we had a subprime mortgage bubble. But we didn't have this much invested in one simple segment of the economy. We do now. AI is sucking up all kinds of dollars for further development. And there's a little teeny catch in all this. There are probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of square feet of file servers sitting idle. Huh? What? Why aren't they using them? Because they don't have the electrical power. And unfortunately, when you have that much in terms of memory storage and you need the file servers to hold all that information, you got a lot more electrical power, and you also have to keep all those file servers cooler. But where do we get that power? Remember, climate change is a hoax, so anybody trying to build alternative energy is clearly making big mistakes. You're betting your economy you're going to fail. By the way, Texas would have gone under with its sub-power grid system and electrical power generation system if a lot of Texas entrepreneurs had not basically installed wind turbines and geothermal and mostly solar. That saved Texas's colossal, Texas steer butt. And generally speaking, the whole world, you look at China right now, they're selling 3 times as many automobiles as we are around the world, and almost every one of those automobiles is an electrical EV. It's an electrical vehicle. So we're not doing that because it's a hoax. When I hear all these words, like the hoax of this and that, it would require a whole community of people to have engaged in this hoax-forming activity for half a century. That's a lot of time for people to hang together just to make a hoax. So we are actually destroying ourselves by pretending things don't exist. And when people say, I know better, I said this before, and I'll say it again. Anytime anyone says climate change is a hoax, and they prefer not to look at the rain that's soaking and turning into hurricanes, they don't want to look at the wildfires, they just ignore that stuff, or the tornadoes, or the whatever. Maybe they should realize that what they're fighting is they're trying to repeal something that is very, very hard to repeal. It's called the laws of physics. And if you think you're going to change the laws of physics, good luck with that. We can call it Mother Nature, we can call it God. And by the way, for those people who say, well, God didn't say this, God said he'd never repeat the Great Flood, he'd never do a mass disaster again. I ask people, if you believe God is that powerful, wouldn't you think God actually created the laws of physics? Got to think about that one a little bit. But even if you don't use religion as a basis for a determination of climate, look around you. What do you need to see to be convinced that it's real? And if we continue not to service that demand, China is laughing all the way to a growing bank. Yes, they have local problems. They have devaluation. They have all kinds of deflationary issues in China. But the one thing they're nailing, and that is turning climate change and alternative power generation into a massive revenue stream for China. Their cars, there are two major companies in China, and they're selling so many cars. And those cars are dirt cheap because, frankly, an electric motor is a whole lot cheaper to repair and maintain than a gas engine. But we don't want to do that. 74% of the investment capital on this planet is going into alternative energy is coming from China. We're letting them do this. Why? We're America. We're the greatest country in the world. Why are we saying, okay, we're tired of being the greatest country in the world? China, come on, you can take over. And even in little things like military hardware development, there's something that most Americans have not actually looked at and cared about. China doesn't have nuclear aircraft carriers yet. They're still working on developing engines that will cause those carriers to move. But China has something that very few countries in the world have, and that is electromagnetic catapults. Now, the interesting thing about steam catapults and other forms of catapults is they're very difficult. It takes a little bit of time and coordination to measure out the weight of the aircraft and then adjust the pressure that you're going to push that aircraft off the deck with. That's why you don't see a lot of countries with it. That's why China's first two aircraft carriers didn't even have catapults. They used the British system where the deck is ramped upwards. So the plane is flying up and it literally rides into the sky. Comes now carrier number 3. Carrier number 3, it's not nuclear, not as big as our biggest, but it's big enough. But it has this catapult. What's the value of a catapult? In seconds, you can detect the weight of the aircraft that you have and you're going to launch. And that basically allows China to do something we've been able to do for a while, and that is to launch different kinds of aircraft for different uses. And what that has done for the United States, electronic warfare has allowed us to launch these aircraft a completely different way into the air to scan the world and actually tell the fighters, bombers, whatever we're sending into combat, what's out there. Now China could do that too. And we seem not to care. We seem to be very happy to let China invest in all these little countries that woke up one day and said, you know what? We don't have any oil. We don't want to buy oil. It's expensive. It's volatile. It's a price structure we can't grapple with. But if we can have a lot of electrical power, we have sun, we have waves, we have wind. We'll take wind and waves and sun and all that stuff and turn it into alternative energy. And anyone who can help us achieve that goal, you're welcome. That ain't us, it's China. That's a shame. I mean, we are America. We should be able to nail this one. So I'm saying all this stuff so as you look at things, where do I put my investment capital? Well, first of all, we are going to hit a bubble. And yes, the stock market is going to tank. And I don't know how badly it's going to tank. And obviously, it's not all going to be uniform. Some companies will be pushed into bankruptcy. The big players will be able to absorb the losses, but it will ripple through the economy. It will reduce pay. People will be laid off. People will react to a down economy the way they always do. There'll be a lot of bankruptcies. And by the way, there are more bankruptcies. Bankruptcies right now are rising, and that's not a good sign for the country. So the more of these bankruptcies that do occur, and they're happening because people can't afford to live, they can't make their mortgage payments, they can't afford to go to their medical costs, these are causing bankruptcies, and that is complete erosion of the American underbelly, economic underbelly. It doesn't really help us. So are we experiencing a fantastic economy, as Donald Trump constantly tells us? Or is it a horrible economy? Well, if you happen to be very heavily invested in the stock market, you're having a great year. You couldn't wish for more. This amazing stock market is doing gangbusters. And remember, I said 80% of the rise in the stock market is due to the increased value in AI stocks. Well, that's kind of interesting. You have that much going for you. And if you were looking at where do I put my money going forward, I don't think you're going to get killed buying major shares in big companies, but you might want to talk about things that people really and truly have to buy, commodities that are basically food-based. And Donald Trump suddenly woke up one day and said, you know what? We don't make a lot of coffee, a little in Hawaii, a little bit in Florida, here or there. Okay, I'll drop those. And bananas, I may be bananas, but we don't grow them. And so he goes to a bunch of these foodstuffs. And my question is, this was obvious to every human being who knows anything about foods when you first thought about putting these tariffs in place. Why did you not take that into consideration? And one of the things the Supreme Court is asking is, this isn't regulation, Mr. Trump. This is a tax. You're imposing an import tax. So we're watching a lot of people overpay for a bunch of AI systems. We already know about the electrical issue. And clearly that's a commodity that we really need to address. And as long as people yell hoax, 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 we're not going to be able to do it here. That's why countries like Saudi Arabia, I don't want to even go into what happened on, I guess, November 19th in the White House when, I guess, Donald Trump said, MBS did not kill anybody. He didn't know about it. And, by the way, here, have some jets. No, not the F-16s we're thinking about sending to Ukraine. We're giving you F-35s. Oh, those chips that we're not letting anybody in the world have a bunch. Oh, by the way, my sons are going to be over there looking at real estate. Something wrong here. Maybe you don't see it. Maybe you don't care. But I do. Not having as much of a trade deficit is actually a sad commentary because Americans aren't buying stuff. We're approaching the Christmas season, and it could be a disaster. We don't know. I don't think it's going to be a good one. So what does that do for jobs? Well, we're in a situation where, notwithstanding a jobs report that kind of glosses over and looks pretty good, not great, but okay, we're not actually seeing people who have jobs quitting them in the numbers that we're used to. We're also still trying to absorb all those federal workers. And one of the reasons the jobs market is so volatile is the Trump administration will fire a bunch of federal employees. And then there'll be a court order and said, did you look at the collective bargaining agreement that you signed, government? Or did you look at the federal statutes of the government, how you get rid of people? You didn't look at those. So all those people come back. So now you have all that unemployment and all those people come back to work. And that messes with the employment statistics in a very messy and big way. There's also some things that are going on in the world on a social basis. And one of the biggies, and I don't know how to deal with this one, but I'm going to throw it out there. It's called, there's a lot of people, Scott Galloway is a noted author on what it means. He wrote a book about it, being a man. And for young men in America, they are not having a particularly good time. And the depression manifests itself in excessive video game playing. And this new craze of sports betting online is causing bankruptcies left, right, and center. It's addictive, and a lot of young men who are not finding the kind of employment they thought they would have are basically trying to make up for it by betting, and online sports betting is wildly popular. It's never been so popular ever. The other thing that you're having with people who live online is, how do I say this politely? You don't know how to deal with other people. The percentage of young men aged 20 to 24 who are neither in school nor working has tripled since 1980. Oh, that's exciting. 45% of the men ages 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person. Oh my God. I mean, we see all the sexual harassment stuff, and then we forget about the lonely guy sitting at home online, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to ask a woman on a date. Between 2018, the share of men who hadn't had sex in the last year rose from 8% to 28%. These are not happy numbers, but you're telling the world why we're having the sort of malaise and depression that's shifting through Gen Z males. On dating apps like Tinder, this is all coming from Scott Galloway, the top 10% of men in attractiveness receive 80 to 90% of all the swipe rights. So all the other guys, you're just dudes or losers, and that it's not going well. So what you wind up, people who are able to date, this have a more normal view of the world, but the dating imbalance contributes to increased susceptibility to misogynistic or extremist content online. Porn is going gangbusters. Who needs a wife? Who needs a family? Who needs a home? I have my porn. Is that a porn again, Christian? No, I don't think so. So men are twice as likely to be suspended from school for the same infraction as girls. Behavior adjusted. So you're seeing acting out through a transitional reality in young males that didn't exist before. Why is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a terrible thing. This is something where people don't know how to relate to other people. They don't know how to create families. And generally speaking, men who are married, I'm not sure if this is true about women or not, but men who are married are almost always happier and live longer than men who are not. So you are also watching a lot of, I'd say, really malevolent behavior to themselves. Men are 3 times more likely to overdose and 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. That's not a good number to anybody at all. So to the extent we have an issue here, it's not just an issue for those men. It's an issue for society. Men are 12 times more likely to be incarcerated than women. Oops, excuse me. I just knocked into my microphone, not intentionally. And what's going on also is if you are putting these anomalies in the system, what you're also seeing a massive increase in anger. And as you see an increase in anger, people don't get along, and they tend to form societal links online in ways that are extreme and not particularly helpful to society. Well, why are we not doing something about it? What could we do about it? Well, families, mothers, fathers, etc., who are now holding down 2 or 3 jobs because of this affordability issue, are living with young men in their homes that should have been out in the world. They don't have college educations because 35% of America thinks that college is a waste of time, as opposed to in 2010 when 35% of them say that's how low it is. The approval rates for higher education in 1970, in 2010, were 75% approved. So something's going on here. And you find that societies where the government provides for college education are showing much more stable, healthy human beings in the world. Add to that their medical costs are covered by universal health care. And what you're seeing is in those societies, productivity is flying upwards. We are charging amazing amounts of money. Go to medical school and pay for your room and board and your tuition. You're going to be somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000 a year for 4 years of medical school. You got 2 years of residency. Residency just doesn't generate a lot of money. You get paid $50,000, $60,000 a year, but you got to pay back your student loans. Good luck with that. And what we keep doing is raising the costs and make it more difficult. UCLA, which just recently settled with the Trump administration it's negotiating a settlement with the Trump administration, because the Trump administration cut off all their funding for healthcare research because they think they're anti-Semitic. The guy who said find people on both sides as right-wing anti-Semitic marchers carrying torches, yelling, "They shall not replace us," are fine people, and this guy's yelling anti-Semitism? I'm very skeptical. Seems like a power grab without any justification. So what are we going to do? What are you going to do? I have an idea. You may not like this one, but I think it's time that we start looking at it. Make your voice heard. Stop sitting passively. I don't know whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or you have some other party, Green, or whatever it might be. Start going to, school board meetings. Start going to city council meetings. When a congressperson comes to do a town hall in your lovely venue, go, participate. And God, if you think you've got something to add, listen, learn, and maybe at some point, raise your voice enough for someone to say, hey, you ought to run for city council, or you ought to run for school board, or you ought to run for Congress. We need people to step in here to start doing things. And mostly people who are younger. Basically, if you're on Social Security, not a good time to start a career. And if you're on Social Security and reaching the higher levels of those payments, it's probably a good time to think, if you're in politics, if you can afford to do it, to step aside. We need new blood. We also have, if we're watching how men are going crazy, women are saying, hey, I'm going to have kids. I can't find a man that I want. I'm going to live my life as a woman independent. And we went from 2.1 live births per couple, which is replacement value. That means society stays the same and stable, to 1.61 to 1.62, which means society is contracting like crazy. We're actually shipping taxpayers out of the country, people who do jobs no one else wants. And we're complaining that, the economy is bad, affordability is bad, and, it's okay for me to have major investments in Saudi Arabia. My family is doing meme street. We're making a fortune in cryptocurrency. Stop! I want that money to go to all the rest of America, not to the Trump family, not to the oligarchs and plutarchs and kleptos who are out in the world today. And that means you have to get involved. You have to make a difference. Instead of complaining about it, and if I were a little younger, I'd probably go do something political, but I ain't young enough to do that anymore. So I'm doing podcasts. I'm hoping somehow people out there listen and decide, you know what? I'm madder than hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, but I'm going to do something. I thought when we had the No Kings rallies, that was a very, very, very interesting part. That was a great reaction. I've never seen anything like that in my life. In the meantime, look at climate change. Some of these things are beginning to move toward irreversible. There's a crucial system of ocean currents in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans that are beginning to stop. The Earth has tilted because of our water use by a lot of degrees. We're waking up one day and this Earth is going to do something very punishing to us. So instead of sitting there and bitching and moaning as I am, don't look at me as a model. I'm just an old fart sort of telling people to get going. Hey, young people, get your ass up, start getting politically involved, learn stuff, read stuff, and stop living off the opinions of others. Start doing the basic research yourself. One of my goals here is to try to open ears, eyes, and minds to things that are objective, but you don't have to take my damn word for it. If you don't believe me, go do your own damn research. But don't take the opinion of highly biased, manipulative people who figured out how to make you do what they want you to do. Make up your own mind and do your own stuff. That's it for now. I wonder if there are any questions out there. Amanda? We're back with questions. Amanda, torture me.
Okay, well, my first comment question thing I would like to discuss is you mentioned Scott Galloway, and he questioned what it means to be a man. After everything you discussed, what comes to my mind is dignity. Where can anyone find dignity right now? Whether you're, I appreciate the statistics that it's difficult to be a man right now. I want to just broaden it. What does it mean to be a person right now, a woman? Where does anybody find dignity when, after all the things you discussed on this episode, housing's unaffordable, food, the cost is outrageous, healthcare, the issues with the climate? Where does anybody go right now to find dignity, particularly in light of the K economy, which you discussed. When you're a winner, there's just dignity in the badge, in the shiny trophy, in being a winner. Naturally, there's automatic dignity. But for everybody else, where does anybody find dignity right now?
First of all, earnings aren't the only index of being a winner. You can take care of people, you can be kind, etc. So I think the first thing that you have to do is get off the goddamn, online gaming universe and the betting universe. Stop it. And if you don't have the discipline to do that, you need to get professional help to help you get out of that. And there is that kind of help available, and it's ubiquitous. Number two, instead of trusting people who have a lot to gain by making you believe one way or another, start weaning yourself from those opinions. Start looking around, and one of the easiest ways to do that is dump all American mass media. Just don't bother. Go to Canadian, go to British, go to Australian, go to New Zealand, and then you can back into the United States and come back and figure out who you trust and whom you don't trust. But the other thing is to understand it's a process. It doesn't happen quickly. You have done something, the economy has changed so diabolically. The political system that exists today is not going to help the average person. So part of this is to say, okay, I need to get into that political system and shift it in a direction that moves in my favor and in favor of people who are like me. I want to help my fellows. I see people in pain. I want to give them a hand, and I want an economy that will benefit all of them. You need to be proactive. You need to take stands. You need to also fail, stand up, shake yourself off, and get back in the race. Failure is just a statement. That didn't work. Try something else. It's not, okay, I failed. I can't do anything else. Stop. Life is filled with failure. Those who recover from failure become the most successful people on earth. Read or input facts incessantly, but not from sources you already know are biased. Go look for unbiased stuff. Read books, read history, and that's a good place to start also. History books. I mean, I've read some amazing history books that are more diabolical and disgusting than anything you could ever read in a novel. For women, and what if you're so inclined, Wild Swans by Iris Chang about women in China is so unbelievable. It's like makes The Handmaid's Tale look tame. I mean, you can read historical books. Focus on the people. History isn't boring when you're reading about people, because when you read novels or watch movies or you see whatever it is, you're looking voyeuristically at people. History is just a bunch of people who did stuff. It's not about dates. It's not about 1776 or 1066 or whatever it is. It's about the people who stood up. Some were killed. Some were basically elevated. Who are they? How'd they get there? And what makes them interesting? How do you find tags in their life that resonate with tags in your life? But what I think the big message here is proactive. Stop sitting on your butt. Get up and do something. I don't care what it is. Just take an active role in society. Don't sit back passively and wait. And if you're a guy, you know what? Ask a woman out for coffee. How risky is that? If they say no, you missed a cup of coffee. Next. And that's a word that you need to embody. Next. I think it's very relevant. Did that answer your question?
Yes, but I have a follow-up.
Oh, God, no. A follow-up. Help me. Okay.
It's clear from prior episodes and this discussion that you are encouraging people to be proactive, get involved, use their voice. And you are particularly telling young people to do that. But what message do you have for the older generation? I mean, the older generation is still here, has a voice, has time, has money. We all have 24 hours in a day. So
I think it's a very interesting reality for older people. And I think priority one is help young people. Get out of the way. Be a support system. Don't try to tell them what to do. Let them try to learn stuff. Help them find out what their goals are. Help them get to their goals. Don't tell them you have to be like me. Don't tell them this is the political party you have to believe in. Don't tell them A, B, and C. Help them be comfortable. And most of all, when you have your children and your grandchildren, don't be scared of saying, I love you with a hug. It's very important. But, older people, if you are saving money for their future, you might actually want to spend some of it on their present so they have a future. There are things out there that can be done. I think caring about people and not shoving your value system into a generation that didn't have any of your values, didn't have any of your opportunities. Maybe there's a few of them at the top are rich because you were rich. But for a lot of those kids, they know they're not going to live as well as you're going to live. Help them live as well as they can and get out of their way. You're not their instructor anymore. And sometimes you got to let a little kid fail, even in their 20s and 30s, because sometimes those lessons are what are transitional.
And what about in the area of politics? What responsibility do you see the older generation having in making space for younger people? There are a lot of younger people who do have a voice and are using them, but what about creating space for these voices?
I think basically, instead of, it's getting back to labels. Old people are very, very, very used to popping. You put a communist label or a socialist label on something, our intention are to kill it. And those labels are inappropriate. I mean, I'll just say, picture a world where the only money is made by AI and nobody can go to college and learn enough stuff or go to trade school and learn enough skills to work. Then we're going to be in socialism because no other way. Everyone else is just going to die. That's not going to happen. So let's start saying the minute you use a label to call someone, you're a Jew, you're a Zionist, you're a Palestinian radical, you're a communist, you're a socialist, you're a Nazi, whatever those words are, you just cut the communication between you and that person or that world completely off. How about just saying, who are you? What do you care about? Not what are you the labels that I need to look to attach to you. Labels are the first thing that got to go if we're ever going to get back together again. If we're not going to get back together again, stand by for a civil war. And by the way, I don't know why they call them civil war because they ain't civil.
You mentioned vertical morality. And if we're in a situation where the person in authority regularly uses language, I shouldn't say regularly, thinks nothing of using vulgar language, degrading language, what can a culture, a nation, a country do when our leader normalizes that type of language?
Are you suggesting Quiet Piggy was inappropriate? I mean, I'm wondering why you think that's bad, or we need to execute these radical left-wing Democrats in Congress. Why do you think that's toxic? The problem is, it's kind of like you need to start looking at politics and politicians who do that like you're looking at a horror movie. It's not real. They are ultimately not going to prevail. And ultimately, if they do prevail, the toxicity that they've spread to everyone else will eventually kill them. It will extinguish their validity. Right now, MAGA, and you got to realize MAGA is filled with a lot of really good people. They care about people. They're charitable. If you've ever been a guest in a southern town and they treat you like gold, you understand that under all that are good people. Mm-hmm. Look for that goodness. But ultimately, you got to start saying, don't make other people's problems your problems. And people who demonize and have toxicity as their essential communications tool are sick. They're mentally ill. And if you let a sick, mentally ill person take over your personality and define how you react to it, you're an idiot. So there you go. I'll call you an idiot. That's a label that sticks. But whatever else is said and done, take responsibility for yourself. And again, don't make other people's problems yours.
But how does, on a macro level, a population as big as a country have that attitude?
Well, it's never going to happen quickly. It's happened right now because the MAGA movement is split into pieces over Epstein. But ultimately, if you look at the Quiet Piggy, you'll look at Gavin Newsom's response, which I would say under normal times is not a particularly healthy response. But how else do you get attention when that's the way people talk today? He basically, pushed out a bunch of piggy images of Donald Trump. Didn't take a lot of editing, but it basically went out in the world and people laughed at it. Donald Trump, when he starts making these buffoonery statements, is not an honorable person. He does not have dignity. He doesn't deserve your worship. He deserves, you feel sorry for him. And you have to ask yourself, he's, heading toward 80. Are his mental faculties all there? I'm looking at it thinking, I'm heading close to there someday myself. Maybe I'm nuts because I'm doing podcasts and only crazy people do podcasts. But ultimately, you really need to look at what is and define it in objective terms, and as opposed to, he said, therefore. That's not a very good way to go. And when you're looking for facts, facts are not the opinions of others.
You mentioned Epstein, so I have to ask you about the Epstein files. Do you think that we're going to get to see them?
Not anytime soon. What's interesting about the bill that Donald Trump signed on the 19th of November is basically it says we will release within the law all materials that the Department of Justice has. Okay, let's start with the fact that the Department of Justice is a private law firm that represents Donald Trump. They have done everything in their power to make sure that these various Epstein files, documents, whatever they are, they have a whole team of FBI agents this summer who did page after page of redacting every mention of Donald Trump. There were over 1,000 mentions. Donald Trump is I don't think he actually took advantage, had sex with any of these young girls. I don't think he recruited girls to be part of the sex exploitation network. But I sure as hell am pretty certain he knew damn well what was going on. And he, that's the way it's always been. Rich, powerful men grab pussy. Oops, he never said that. Yeah, we did it on mic. I'm just saying it isn't going to come out the way you want, because let's look at how you stop it. One, if there's an active investigation, all materials relating to that active investigation cannot be released to the public because that's prejudicial to the litigation in question. The DOJ has commenced a whole bunch of new investigations into Donald Trump, and also primarily now Democrats. That's the distraction we're looking for. We'll find all these pervies in the Democratic Party, as everybody assumed from the beginning from Pizzagate. But what you're basically seeing is investigations that give the DOJ an ability to say, we can't release those documents because you're part of an active investigation. So that's one out. Another out is simply to redact everything, hand the documents in and say, well, we handed them to you. Didn't say we couldn't redact them. Well, it kind of did, but we know that the Trump administration plays games with this stuff. But here's another one. Grand jury testimony and the documents presented as part of that grand jury testimony are secret. So one of the other things that people are going to say is, well, we can't show you that because unless a judge makes a specific ruling in a specific matter, we cannot release grand jury transcripts, and that includes documents that were presented to the grand jury during the investigatory process. So now we have grand jury excuse, active investigation going on, simply defying and playing games by redacting stuff. And do you believe that perhaps some of the documents that everyone is worried about, Trump saying, they're putting documents in there? I have the opposite feeling. And that is, they may be taking documents out of there. Whatever else is said and done, the Epstein files are simply absolute confirmation that this is a government you cannot trust. This is an administration that is untrustworthy and has stuff to hide. Whether he's guilty of a crime, I doubt that. But if you really believe that the network of people on top, the people who donated money so he could build that absolutely essential, who could have lived without a grand ballroom with gold everywhere? Look at the donors. All of those donors for him, for the campaign donors, the inauguration donors, etc., they make it known that they made the donation. And they're up with the government approval process, Securities and Exchange Commission, Department of Justice, Federal Communications Commission. I can go down the list of all the things where the government can regulate. And if you think they're not doing that, look at Trump saying to his little Mr. Carr, FCC chief, you need to take a look at ABC and get rid of all their broadcast licenses. And he did it. He's doing it. So they're terrified. Also, if you happen to be on the wrong side of Donald Trump he can scare all your customers or all your business relationships away by saying, don't mess with this person. Don't do business with the person, because if you do, I'll get you. And that's not very healthy. So every one of those donors, I look at them as paying bribes. And I'm sorry, I don't like bribes. I look at Saudi Arabia with billions of dollars invested into Trump-related activities or Trump family-related activities. I just don't like that. It's not the America that I grew up with, and it's not an acceptable America to me, and it shouldn't be to most Americans either.
So how do you think it'll play out?
I think the issue that Donald Trump is running into right now is, can he hold his hegemony, his iron grip on the Republican Party after the Epstein stuff comes out enough to taint him? Well, he's a convicted felon. He ran after being a convicted felon. He has a bunch of crazy people in his cabinet. You know, you look at Robert Kennedy Jr., they worship him, but he's killing people. People are dying from diseases that people thought were going to be under control. Or you look at, Scott Bessent, who's sitting there making the case that tariffs aren't taxes when everyone he knows that they're taxes. And you're looking at people like Kash Patel, who's flying around with his FBI agents guarding his girlfriend in Nashville. That's not America, folks. That's not the way we do things. It's funny, if you go to Uruguay and ask yourself, how does the president get to work? He drives himself, stays at home, and that's the way it works. We need to start understanding that being an elected official is a public service. It is not an opportunity to make money. If you want to make money, go do something that makes money directly and stop trying to do it behind the backs of the American people who pay taxes, who elected you, and who trust you. Trust has to come back into the building. Right now, the trust is so far out of the building, you can't even see it with a telescope.
No more questions.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'm trying to do my best here. I'm sure I'm making a few mistakes along the way, but I'm sure trying to get the facts straight for you. So hang in there until next time. Peter Dekom saying goodbye until we meet again.
If you would like to give feedback, suggestions for new topics, or have a question that might be selected for a future podcast, please email us at dekompodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time.